Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to look at the best new decks, which are going to be coming around from the new Shining Fates expansion. We didn't do a video on the best new decks from Champions Path, which was last year's Shining Fates, and the reason was very simple. Champions Path didn't really bring us any new decks. Shining Fates might be some fancy extra special set. It might have gold cards and shiny cards. I want me that ducklet. Everyone else is all after these kind of super fancy cards. I'm a simple wussy. Just get me the ducklet. Just because that wasn't some kind of like instruction to you guys. That's more just me throwing it out into the world. I'm going to open some of these packs. I want that ducklet. Obviously, I've got the Japanese ducklet. He needs an English friend. Get me the ducklet, universe. Get me the ducklet. But the point is, there are actually a bunch of really good new cards which are going to bring in good new decks from the set. So let's have a little bit of a gander. And the one that really excites me first of all is the Koffing, which is going to make Galarian Weezing into a much better deck. You see, Koffing has got Ascension. For 1 Darkness Energy, search for a card that evolves in this Pokemon, put it onto this Pokemon, shuffle your deck. And the card is gonna be Galarian Weezing, which, if it's in the active, your opponent is ability locked. So you want to go second here. Your opponent has 1 turn, but they can't attack and they can't play supporter cards, so it's going to be a fairly muted turn, I think would be the way to put it. And then they're ability locked for the entire game. It's not a deck I've seen lots of lists coming out of Japan lately, but there has got to be a whole bunch of potential here, just in terms of having an ability locked deck. And the way you're going to play it is the way we play all of these annoying decks. You're going to play it with Crushing Hammer to get rid of energy. We're going to play a bunch of things like Boss's Orders and Great Catcher to strand Pokemon in the active to annoy your opponent. Team Yell Grunt is probably going to see a little bit of play. You might even go really crazy and play it with stuff like Orbeetle to try and rearrange the top cards of your opponent's deck. And bearing in mind, I know Orbeetle's a stage 2, but if your opponent is ability locked and massively slowed down, that is going to give you time to get something like a stage 2 Orbeetle into play. It's not a deck I've seen making waves lately, but do remember we've not really had enough tournaments for it to really make waves, so give it time. But it's one that has so much potential, we have got to bear it in mind. Now, one deck that isn't necessarily new, but kind of is, let me explain, is Rusted Sword and what it's doing to Zacian. You see, Zacian is already 2 of the very best decks in the game. Because on the one hand, you've got Zacian ADP, using ADP to do extra damage and take extra prizes with every KO. We all know it's an oppressively good deck. And then we've got Lucario and Melmetal, which reduces damage done to all of your metal Pokemon. Combine it with Metal Goggles and you've got a very tanky deck indeed. But Rusted Sword comes in as a new way of playing Zacian. And essentially, it's just Quad Zacian Smash. Because now what you do is you attach Rusted Sword. It's that new tool that lets Zacian V do an extra 30 damage. You play it with Berserker, the one from Sword and Shield that lets you do an extra 20 damage, and all of a sudden your 230 isn't 230, it's 260, 280, 300. You're into legitimate tag team KOing territory. And okay, you're probably not going to be one-hit KOing VMAXs, especially because none of them are weak to you, but if you're 2-hit KOing for 3 prizes and they're 1-hit KOing for 2 prizes, well, it's not the end of the world. But also, you're going to be faster and more efficient because you've got the ability Intrepid Sword to draw cards and accelerate energy to yourself. You've got Metal Saucer to accelerate energy to yourself. You've got Turbo Patch to accelerate energy to yourself. Make no mistake about it, if this deck goes first, legitimate turn 2 280 absolutely on the table. Because you'll have had a turn to evolve your Berserker, and you'll have used Intrepid Sword and had essentially 2 turns of your items, etc. This is a deck which is already seeing play and winning over in Japan, and it's the kind of thing which I think we should start really expecting to see a lot more. Plus, bear in mind, ADP is going to rotate out in August, September time. And Lucario and Melmetal is going to rotate out around August, September time, but none of the cards that I've just mentioned in this new build of Zacian are going to rotate out at around August, September time. And that means that it's going to be something which is hanging around for a while. So get used to it and yay. Now, potentially my favourite deck, which is coming around because of this, is Dhelmise VMAX. I like Dhelmise. I spent a long time trying to convince my friends that actually know lots about the video game metagame that it was going to be good in VG. In a shocking twist, turns out my friends who are experts in the VG know more about VG than I do as a casual VG player. Would you believe it? But that doesn't mean I don't love Dhelmise VMAX. Now, this one is probably destined to be a bit more of a fringe deck. It has been winning some tournaments over in Japan, albeit slightly smaller tournaments. But then again, there aren't bigger tournaments right now. There's a damn Panic on. But what we've got here is single energy, and, well, minimum. And for each grass energy attached to Dhelmise, you do 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, which gives you the option of essentially piling energy on and just sniping your opponent's Pokemon off the bench, which is fun. But then you got free energy 240, and free energy 240 is really, really efficient. You're getting all of the Pokemon Vs, other than ones like Zacian, which is annoyingly resistant, so you'll be 10 damage short, which sucks. But you'll be getting the vast majority of them. Unless they're resistant, you'll be getting them. And that's nice. And then don't forget you've got Dhelmise V, which nice attack, single energy 120 if you had a grass Pokemon KO'd the previous turn. It's also got free energy 200, but that is just a worse version of Max Anchor. But don't forget you will probably play Memory Capsule in this particular deck, so you can copy that first attack after a KO for little energy. And you'll probably also play Telescopic Sight here, so if you are using the sniping attack on the VMAX, you're doing an extra 30 damage to GXs and Vs, which is kind of cool. And you'll play this with Rillaboom to accelerate a little bit of energy. Every turn it lets you search for 2 grass energy from your deck and attach them. And then of course, because you're playing that, you're going to be playing Rowlet and Alolan Executor, which for no energy will let you evolve a Grookey right up to a Rillaboom the first turn you're allowed to attack. It is a deck which is very, very much on my radar, and maybe it's going to end up not being quite good enough. But Rillaboom into a Dhelmise to smash. This, incidentally, is one of those decks that we have on this channel shown a winning list of, so I will give a link to that in the description. In fact, except for Galarian Weezing, I've shown you winning lists for all of these decks so far. Though some of them are pre-rotations, you'll have to make a couple of little changes, not major. So do check them out in the description. Speaking of new VMAXs, they're going to make new decks, but they evolved from old Pokemon V. How about Cramorant VMAX? And Cramorant VMAX is one that I have definitely got my eye on. You see, what we've got here is free energy, and you flip a coin for each energy on there, so you can obviously put more on. And for each heads, you do 80 damage. But you're an evolved Pokemon, so don't forget you've got triple acceleration energy. And you're talking colorless energy here, so you can go whichever way you want. Maybe you play a Welder build, so you're accelerating energy with Welder. Or maybe you play a Porygon Z build, so that you can attach as much special energy as you like. Bearing in mind you've got stuff like draw energy. When you attach it, you draw a card. Recycle energy. When it goes away, you just get it back into your hand, etc. So these are things I think you should consider. But then if you flip enough heads, you're just going to do crazy high damage. Do obviously remember that Glimwood Tangle lets you reflip, and it's all or nothing, but you need 3 heads, you flip 2, Glimwood Tangle. Have another go. But the other thing that makes me really excited about Cramorant is the option you've got with Memory Capsule. Because Memory Capsule here basically lets you copy the attacks of your previous evolutions. So what you would do is you would use Cramorant VMAX and a Memory Capsule to use Spit Shot from Cramorant V for just a single energy. well, triple acceleration energy. So now all of a sudden you are sniping the bench for 60 on a giant Pokemon and you are good to go. It also does give you a Cramorant with a lot more HP, so people that have got an answer for Cramorant V might not have an answer for Cramorant V Max. This is another one that's been winning smaller tournaments over in Japan, and maybe it's going to end up being a fringe deck and a little overblown, etc., but it's one that I have absolutely got my eye on. And the final new deck I want to talk about from Shining Fates is another one of these new VMAXs. It's Crobat VMAX. Now, straight off the bat, what does Crobat VMAX evolve from? Crobat V, which is already a staple in almost every deck, because when you play it from your hand to your bench, you get to draw until you got 6 cards in your hand. So now all of a sudden, you are going to be just rushing around, and I mean rushing around, because you're going to be drawing so many extra cards, because when you're playing Crobat V naturally, because you want to evolve it, you're drawing cards, which is a little bit over the top silly good. So that sounds like fun. And essentially what we've got here is a hit and run deck. Crobat V Max for 2 energy does 70 damage and poison and switches to the bench. What are you going to put active? I mean, Lily's Pokédoll's got to be a really good option here, right? So that is essentially an item card that acts as a Pokemon and does not give up a prize when KO'd. So that's essentially 4 times your opponent's going to be attacking and not taking a prize even when they get a KO, which is blatantly going to be a little bit hilarious for you, not for your opponent. The other option, of course, is the aforementioned Galarian Weezing, the one I mentioned earlier in the video, which is Ability Lock. So you hit 70 and go to the bench, and then they're poisoned, and then you Ability Lock them. And you might be thinking, well, oh, that's all well and good, Wassy, but come on. How am I going to get my Galarian Weezing out the active? It's got a retreat cost of 3. Well, don't forget Hiding Darkness Energy is a thing. It's a Darkness Energy, and on a Darkness Pokemon, it gives free retreat. So that's going to work quite beautifully. And then there's all the other tricks you can use. You've got Absol to increase basic Pokemon's retreat cost, making it less likely they can get out the active and more likely they're going to continue taking poison damage, which is fun. And you can play that Toxicroak, which increases poison damage, so they're taking even more damage between turns, which is also kind of fun. Sableye V becomes a really nice option here, because of course Sableye V does damage based on how much damage is on them. Sableye V essentially takes a little bit of damage and turns it into a lot bit of damage. So it does 10 damage base plus 60 for each damage counter on them. So after you've done a bit of damage using stuff like Crobat, whose damage cap is a little bit low to begin with, all of a sudden Sableye comes in and smashes. Although do remember, every time you smash with Sableye, you're not actually going to be ability locking them, so you need to be slightly careful. But then again, in some matchups, the ability lock is going to win you, so ignore Sableye. And in some matchups, the ability lock isn't going to be enough, so use it for as long as you can and then take big KOs with Sableye. Either way, this may well end up being the best deck of the bunch. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of people want to think about Shining Fates as just a set where you're trying to pull those shiny Pokemon, but actually, in terms of good cards and good decks, no, it's not going to be on the same level as something like Battle Styles, obviously, but it's pretty gosh darn good, ladies and gentlemen. There are some good cards to be pulled. But I want to know what you think, and I want to know which of these decks you're most excited about playing, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.